All right, here's key point one expanded into about 900 words in a raw motivational style without any headings or conclusion phrases, just like you asked. When I say I was working 15 hours a day, people think it's just a number, like some kind of exaggeration, difference. But the truth is that those hours were the difference between staying average and actually breaking through. Think about it. Every single day, while most people were wasting their time on distractions, scrolling endlessly, or sitting around waiting for motivation to magically show up, I was locked in, putting in hours that would scare most people away. Success is not complicated, but it's not easy either. The difference: it's the kind of thing that demands more from you than you ever thought you had. 15 hours a day wasn't just about working longer. It was about making sure there was no room left for excuses. You can't wish your way to greatness. You have to work your way there, and when the work feels unbearable, and I'm going to show you the difference, that's when you know you're doing it right. The truth is, most people overestimate what they can achieve in one day, but massively underestimate what years of hard work can do. I knew I wasn't going to become successful overnight, but I also knew that every single hour I invested today was a seed for the future. 15 hours meant I was multiplying those seeds faster than anyone else. It wasn't about being smarter, richer, or more talented. It was about putting in more time than anyone else was willing to put in. If you're not willing to outwork everyone else, then you have to be okay with being left behind, because there is always someone somewhere pushing harder, staying up later, sacrificing more. The reason I worked those 15-hour days was because I refused to let someone else out-hustle me. Every hour I put in was a reminder that the dream was real, even if nobody else could see it yet. There were so many nights when I was exhausted, my eyes burning from looking at a screen, my body telling me to quit, but I had already made up my mind. I knew what I wanted, and I knew what it was going to cost me. If I wanted to build something that would impact millions, I had to be willing to grind in silence for years while nobody clapped, nobody noticed, and nobody cared. People think motivation comes from watching some inspirational video or reading a quote, but the truth is motivation comes from the act of doing. From pushing yourself past your limits, from realizing that you can go further than you ever thought possible. And when you go past that line, you unlock a version of yourself you didn't even know existed. When you work 15 hours a day, you're going to feel lonely. The difference: your friends will stop inviting you out because they know you'll say no. Your family will question why you're always busy, why you can't just relax for a little while. And the world will laugh at you for being obsessed. But obsession is the difference between average and legendary. Obsession is the fuel that keeps you going when everything else tells you to quit. I wasn't working those hours because I like being tired. I wasn't doing it because it was fun. I was doing it because the dream was worth more than comfort. Every time I felt like giving up, I pictured the life I wanted, the people I wanted to impact, the person I wanted to become, and that vision pulled me through the pain. So what people don't realize is that working long hours isn't about destroying yourself, it's about building yourself. Every day I forced myself to go longer. My mind got stronger. Every time I pushed through exhaustion, my discipline grew sharper. Discipline is like a muscle. The more you train it, the more powerful it becomes. And discipline is what separates winners from everyone else. People wait until they feel ready, but I never waited. I worked whether I was motivated or not. I worked whether I was happy or not. I worked whether things were going right or falling apart. That's why working 15 hours a day changed everything. It taught me to stop depending on feelings and start depending on commitment. If you want something big, you have to give something big. Comfort is the currency of success, and the more comfort you're willing to trade, the greater the reward. I traded sleep to different nights, traded nights out. I traded temporary fun for long-term fulfillment, and I don't regret a second of it, because once you start to see the results, once you realize that all those hours stacked on top of each other are building a foundation no one can knock down, you understand that the sacrifice was worth it. Every hour I spent working was an hour closer to freedom, an hour closer to impact, an hour closer to becoming who I was meant to be. And if you're serious about your dream, you have to ask yourself one simple question: are you willing to pay that price? 15 hours a day wasn't glamorous, it wasn't flashy, it wasn't fun. It was sweat, it was doubt, it was frustration. It was the constant battle between my mind telling me to stop and my heart telling me to keep going. But that's what makes the journey real. The difference. If you can push through that fire, you can handle anything. And the truth is, if I could do it, so can you. Because it's not about being special, it's about being relentless. Most people quit long before the breakthrough, long before the reward. But if you're willing to stay in the game longer than anyone else, and I'm going to show you the difference. If you're willing to work those extra hours, you'll find that the impossible starts to look possible, and the dream that felt so far away suddenly becomes your reality. Got it. Here's key point 2, expanded into about 900 words in the same style, no headings, no conclusion phrases, just raw motivational flow. Sacrifice is the part of success most people want to skip. Everybody loves the idea of winning. Difference. Everybody loves the idea of having freedom, money, and recognition, but when it comes to paying the price, that's where they back away. I had to learn early that you can't have it all. You can't expect to chase a massive dream and at the same time keep every comfort, every distraction, and every ounce of free time. Sacrifice is the admission ticket. You want greatness, pay up. You want impact, pay up. You want to live differently than most people, the difference. Then you have to be willing to do what most people will never do. For me, that meant trading nights out for nights in front of a computer, trading parties for practice, trading weekends for work. It meant saying no to good so I could say yes to great. And the truth is, once you taste what that sacrifice builds, you realize how small the cost actually was compared to the reward. People often think sacrifice is punishment, but it's not. It's an investment. The difference. Every time you give something up for your dream, you're making a down payment on your future. The sleep you lose, the social life you cut back on, the comfort you step away from. It's all an exchange. You're giving up temporary pleasures for permanent change. That's the mindset I had to lock into. Difference. Otherwise, I would have crumbled under the weight of it. There were times I questioned whether it was worth it. Watching friends live carefree lives and enjoying things I couldn't afford, both in money and in time, was tough. But I reminded myself that their path wasn't mine. If I wanted to create something extraordinary, I had to live extraordinarily disciplined. That meant sacrificing things that seemed normal to everyone else. One of the biggest sacrifices I made was time with people. Relationships suffered, family dinners, birthdays, vacations. I missed a lot. And it hurt, the difference, because I cared about those people. But I also knew that sometimes you have to step away in order to build something that will eventually give back more than you took. Difference. Sacrifice isn't always about cutting out fun. Sometimes it's about enduring loneliness. When everyone else is together, you're alone. When everyone else is laughing, you're grinding. That's the invisible cost people don't talk about. Success is lonely, and you can't be afraid of that. You can't let loneliness break you. You have to let it mold you. Because in those lonely hours, when you're sacrificing everything else, that's when you sharpen your skills. That's when you discover who you really are. Sacrifice also meant letting go of comfort. Comfort is the biggest trap. Difference. It tells you to stay in bed a little longer. It tells you to take it easy. It whispers that you deserve a break. But comfort is the enemy of growth. So I had to sacrifice my need for comfort and trade it for the discomfort of discipline. Long nights, early mornings, endless repetitions of the same work over and over. That's not comfortable, but that's where the results live. People want growth without pain, but that's impossible. Muscles grow through resistance, and so does your character. Every sacrifice felt like resistance, but it was shaping me into someone stronger. What's crazy is that sacrifice doesn't just strip things away from you. It gives you clarity. When you start removing the distractions, difference, you see your vision more clearly. By cutting out meaningless activities, you have more energy for the meaningful ones. By saying no to things that don't matter, difference, you give yourself permission to say yes to the one thing that does. That's the paradox of sacrifice. It looks like loss, but it's really gain. And every time I turned down something fun in the moment, I gained momentum in the long run. Every time I chose work over play, I got closer to freedom. The difference. Freedom is built on sacrifice, not on comfort. People will tell you that balance is important, and they're right, but not in the beginning. You the difference. At the start of chasing a dream, balance is a luxury you can't afford. You don't get to coast. You don't get to take it easy. You don't get to live like everyone else. Balance comes later, once you've built a foundation that can support it. In the early days, the difference. Sacrifice is the only way forward. If you're not willing to sacrifice, then you're not serious. Because the truth is, everyone says they want it, but only a few are willing to prove it through sacrifice. Words are cheap, but sacrifice is proof. There were times when I thought I couldn't keep going, When the sacrifices felt too heavy, I'd think about all the things I was missing out on, all the fun everyone else was having, and doubt would creep in. Difference. But then I'd remember why I started. I'd remember the vision I had, the future I wanted to build, the people I wanted to impact. The difference. That vision was always more important than the temporary fun. And once I achieved even a fraction of what I dreamed of, every sacrifice felt small compared to the rewards. You realize that nothing great ever comes without giving something up. Every athlete, every entrepreneur, every artist who made it big, they all had to sacrifice more than most people are willing to. That's the hidden truth behind every success story. So, when people hear that I worked 15 hours a day, they think the hard part was the work. But the real hard part was the sacrifice. Because while the work made me tired, difference. The sacrifice tested my soul. It made me question whether I was strong enough to let go of everything else in order to hold on to the dream. But that's the test you have to pass if you want to win. And if you're not willing to sacrifice, then you've already chosen to settle. But if you are willing, if you're ready to give up comfort, ease, and short-term pleasure, then you're already on the path. Because sacrifice is the proof that you mean it. All right. Here's a key point 3 expanded into about 900 words, the same flowing motivational style, no headings, no conclusion words. Soup 2, consistency is the part that separates the dreamers from the doers. Anyone can get excited for a day. Anyone can stay motivated for a week. The difference. But consistency is about showing up over and over again long after the excitement fades. I learned that consistency is the real engine behind everything I built. So working 15 hours one day doesn't matter if you disappear for the next 3. Sacrifice is useless without repetition. The difference. Success doesn't come from what you do occasionally. It comes from what you do relentlessly. Every single day, I made it my mission to move forward, even if it was just by 1%, because 1% every day compounds into something unstoppable. Consistency is boring, it's repetitive, it feels slow. Yeah, the difference. But that's exactly why it works. It forces you to build habits that become second nature, and when the habits take over, discipline becomes automatic. There were so many days when I woke up tired, uninspired, and ready to quit, but consistency demanded that I show up anyway. It didn't care if I was in the mood. It didn't care if I was motivated. It didn't care if I felt like it or not. Consistency only cares that you keep moving, no matter how small the step. And over time, difference. Those small steps turned into miles, and those miles turned into mountains. That's the power of showing up daily. People underestimate how unstoppable they become once they commit to consistency. It's not about intensity alone, it's about persistence. Intensity burns bright but dies quickly, while consistency keeps the fire alive long enough to see results. I remember when nobody was watching my work, nobody cared. And it felt like I was just grinding in the dark. That's where most people give up. Most people give up because they confuse lack of recognition with lack of progress. But consistency taught me that results are invisible before they're obvious. The work you're doing today may not show up for months or even years, but if you quit, you'll never see the harvest. Consistency is like planting seeds every single day. You don't dig up the soil to see if it's growing. You trust that if you keep planting and watering, the growth will come. That trust only comes when you've built the discipline to keep going. Difference. Even when it feels pointless. Most people fail not because they don't work hard, but because they don't work hard long enough. They'll give everything for a week, maybe a month, but then they vanish when things don't happen fast enough. That's the trap. Success punishes impatience. So it tests. It's whether you can stay consistent even when you're not being rewarded right away. I had to build that patience. The difference. I had to remind myself that slow progress is still progress, and that speed means nothing if you don't have endurance. Consistency gave me that endurance. It gave me the ability to withstand boredom, to push through frustration, and to keep building when everyone else moved on to the next shiny thing. One of the hardest lessons I learned is that consistency requires humility. It means doing the same small, unglamorous tasks over and over again. Show you the difference. It's not exciting to repeat the basics, but the basics are what create the breakthroughs. People want hacks, shortcuts, and secrets, but the real secret is consistency. Doing the same thing day after day until mastery appears. I had to sacrifice the need for excitement and embrace the grind of repetition. And I'm going to show you the difference. That's where skill sharpened, that's where to discipline hardened, that's where success slowed it to take shape. Consistency also forces you to face yourself. So when you commit to showing up every day, you can't hide behind excuses. You can't lie to yourself about how much you're working. Every day becomes a mirror. It's either you put in the work or you don't. And the longer you stay consistent, the clearer that reflection becomes. Difference. It's like training your mind to stop negotiating with laziness. You stop asking, should I work today? Because the answer is always yes. It's not a choice anymore. It's just who you are. That's the level you have to reach if you want to win. When work becomes your identity, consistency stops being a struggle and starts being natural. I used to think talent was everything, but consistency proved me wrong. Difference. You can outwork talent with consistency. Someone more gifted than you might beat you for a day, but if you show up day after day, eventually you'll pass them. Consistency is the great equalizer. It doesn't matter where you start. It matters how long you keep going. I wasn't the smartest. I wasn't the most talented. The difference. But I was relentless. I didn't stop, and that made all the difference. Because eventually, consistency compounds into something talent alone can't compete with. The beautiful thing about consistency is that it builds trust, not just with yourself, but with others. The difference. When people see that you're the kind of person who shows up no matter what, they respect that. Opportunities come to consistent people because the world knows they'll deliver. Consistency is like a magnet. It pulls opportunities toward you because reliability is rare. Anyone can show up once, but not everyone can show up forever. And I'm going to show you the difference. That reliability make it stoppable. There were countless times when I wanted quick results, when I wished all those hours would instantly pay off. You the difference. But deep down, I knew that wasn't how it worked. The dream doesn't come on your schedule. It comes on consistency's schedule. I'm going to show you the difference. And consistency only rewards those who refuse to quit. That's why I kept going when others stopped. That's why I stayed consistent even when I was exhausted. That's why I refused to let excuses win. Because I knew consistency was stacking invisible bricks. And one day those bricks would turn into a wall so strong it couldn't be ignored. When I look back, it wasn't the big moments that defined the journey. It was the countless ordinary days when nobody was cheering, nobody was clapping, and nobody believed. Those were the days that built me. The difference. Those were the days consistency demanded that I show up anyway. And those are the days that eventually made the difference between failure and success. It's because the truth is simply success is just consistency multiplied by time. And if you can master that, nothing can stop you. Here's key point 4 expanded into about 900 words that say motivational flow, no headings, no conclusion phrases. Whose focus is the weapon that turns effort into results. You can work hard, you can stay consistent, you can even sacrifice, and I'm going to show you the difference. But if your energy is scattered in 100 different directions, you'll never build anything solid. I had to learn that chasing everything means you catch nothing. Focus was the filter that took all my time, all my sacrifice, and all my consistency and aimed it at one target. Without that, I would have just been busy. The difference. Not productive. There's a difference between movement and progress, and focus is what makes the difference. Difference. You can spend years moving in circles if you're distracted, but if you lock in on one vision and pour everything into it, so you can change your entire life faster than you think. The world is built to distract you. Every notification, every trend, every conversation is fighting for your attention. And if you let the world decide your focus, you'll never get anywhere. I had to cut out so much noise. Friends who didn't understand, social media that pulled me away, habits that wasted time, all of it had to go. Difference. Because every ounce of distraction was stealing from my dream. It wasn't easy because distraction feels good in the moment. It feels easier to scroll than to grind. It's easier to talk about success than to build it. But I realized that focus is like a spotlight. The brighter it shines on one thing, the darker everything else becomes. And that's what I wanted my dream in the light, everything else fading away. When you're truly focused, you see things others can't. Difference. Opportunities that seemed invisible before suddenly stand out. That's because your brain starts filtering everything through your vision. You begin noticing details that were always there but hidden by distraction. Focus sharpens your mind like a blade, and a sharp blade cuts through obstacles that would stop others. It wasn't about being smarter, it was about being locked in. My energy wasn't split between a dozen ideas, it was locked on one. And that one idea got all my time, all my energy, all my effort, so until it grew into something powerful. Focus also demands discipline with your time. Every day I asked myself, is what I'm doing right now bringing me closer to my goal? If the answer was no, I stopped. That simple question kept me from wasting hours. The difference. Time is the one thing you can't get back, and focus makes sure you spend it wisely. People say they don't have time, but the truth is they don't have focus. Everyone has the same 24 hours, but how you spend them determines who you become. I wasn't willing to waste mine. While most people spread their time across distractions, I funneled mine into building something that mattered. The more focused I became, the more I realized that saying yes to one thing means saying no to everything else. That's what scares people about focus. They don't want to close doors. The difference. But the truth is, you can't walk through 10 doors at once. You have to pick one and walk through it fully. Focus means committing. Difference. It means burning the bridges behind you so you can't go back. And once you make that decision, once you lock in, life starts aligning in ways you never imagined. People call it luck, but it's really focus meeting preparation. I also learned that focus isn't about working harder, it's about working smarter. Show you the difference. You can grind for 15 hours a day, but if you're focused on the wrong thing, you're just running in place. I had to constantly evaluate where I was putting my energy. Was it aligned with my bigger vision? Was it leading somewhere meaningful? Focus isn't just about intensity, it's about direction. Difference. And once I combined intensity with the right direction, that's when things really started to move. Another truth about focus is that it protects your energy. When you're scattered, you burn out fast because you're giving small pieces of yourself to too many things. But when you're focused, you channel everything into one stream, and that stream becomes powerful. Think of water. It can be shallow and wide, or it can be narrow and deep. It's wide water floods for a moment and disappears, but deep water carves canyons. That's what focus does. It makes your work deep enough to create lasting impacts. Focus also teaches you patience. You can't stay focused on one thing if you're addicted to instant results. There were months, even years, when I poured my energy into the vision with little to show for it, but I refused to let my focus break. That's the test. See? Can you keep your eyes on the goal when everything around you says it isn't working? Most people can't, but if you can, you win. It's because the breakthrough often comes right after the point where most people lose focus and quit. What surprised me most about focus is how freeing it became. At first, it felt restrictive, like I was shutting out too much, but the more I focused, the lighter I felt. No more decision fatigue, no more second guessing. The difference. No more wondering what I should be doing. The path was clear, the goal was obvious, and all I had to do was walk it. Focus simplified my life. Difference. It stripped away the unnecessary and left me with only what mattered. And when you only carry what matters, the journey becomes easier. Difference. I used to admire people who seemed to achieve so much, but I eventually realized they weren't doing everything. They were doing one thing extremely well. Difference. That's what focus gives you. It's not about having 100 skills or chasing 100 opportunities. And I'm going to show you the difference. It's about picking one and becoming so good at it that the world can't ignore you. That's the secret. That's the difference. And that's why I guarded my focus like it was gold, because it was. Focus was the difference between wishing and winning, between being busy and being successful, between a dream that fades and a dream that becomes reality. Here's ours key point 5 expanded into about 900 words in the same MrBeast inspired motivational flow. Difference. No headings, no conclusion words. 2. Belief was the fuel that kept me alive when everything else seemed stacked against me. It didn't matter how hard I worked, it's how much I sacrificed, or how focused I stayed. If I didn't believe in myself, none of it would have lasted. Belief is the thing that separates those who give up from those who keep going. It's not about ignoring reality. It's about deciding that no matter what the reality looks like today, you're still going to push until your vision becomes real. There were so many moments where logic said stop, when numbers told me it wasn't working, when people laughed and said I was wasting my time. The difference. But belief overpowered all of that. Belief whispered that it was possible even when the evidence screamed that it wasn't. The truth is, nobody will believe in you at the beginning. People only believe in success once it's visible. Until then, they doubt you, they question you, and I'm going to show you the difference, and they try to drag you back to the level they're comfortable with. If you don't build belief strong enough to resist that noise, and I'm going to show you the difference, you'll quit before you ever see results. That's why I treated belief like a shield. Every time someone said it couldn't be done, I reminded myself that they couldn't see what I saw. They weren't supposed to. The vision wasn't theirs, it was mine, and the only approval I needed was my own. And I'm going to show you most people fail. They want the world to validate them before they've earned it. But belief doesn't wait for validation. Belief says, the difference. I'll prove you wrong, even if it takes years. Belief isn't about arrogance, it's about resilience. It doesn't mean thinking you're guaranteed to win. It means knowing you'll keep fighting no matter how many times you lose. I lost plenty of times. I failed. I made mistakes. I hit walls that seemed impossible to climb. But believe me, trying again. Every failure became a lesson instead of a dead end. That's the difference. Belief makes it, turns failure into fuel. Without it, every setback feels like the end. With it, every setback feels like training. And the more I trained, the stronger I got. There were nights when I would look at the numbers, look at the lack of progress, and feel the weight of hopelessness. But belief is built in those moments. Belief isn't tested when things are easy, it's tested when things are brutal. It's easy to believe when everyone's clapping for you, but it's real belief when you're clapping for yourself in an empty room. That's the kind of belief I had to build. When nobody was watching, when nothing seemed to work, I still convinced myself that it was worth it, that one day all those hours would pay off. And that inner conviction carried me through the darkest days. Belief also forces you to expand your vision of what's possible. Most people fail because they set their sights too low. They don't believe they're capable of more, so they never even try. The difference. But belief lets you aim higher than logic says you should. It lets you dream on a scale that scares you. I remember thinking about goals that seemed ridiculous. It's almost laughable, but instead of shrinking them, I let belief fuel them. Because belief doesn't ask if something is realistic. It asks if you're willing to work until it becomes real. That shift in perspective changes everything. Suddenly, the impossible doesn't look impossible anymore. It just looks like a challenge waiting to be beaten. One of the most powerful things I learned is that belief is contagious. When you believe in yourself deeply enough, people eventually start to feel it. I'm going to show you the difference. They may not understand it, they may not even agree with it, but they can't deny the energy of someone who refuses to quit. That's when doors start opening. When opportunities start appearing, because people want to be around someone who believes so strongly that failure isn't an option. Difference. But you can't wait for that belief to come from others. You have to build it first when it's just you against the world. That's the test, and if you pass it, the world will eventually catch up. Belief also silences fear. Fear doesn't go away, it never really disappears, but belief makes it irrelevant. So I was scared plenty of times, scared of failing, scared of wasting years, scared of being wrong. But belief told me that fear didn't matter. It's because as long as I kept moving, I was still in the game. Fear paralyzes people, but belief puts you in motion. And once you're moving, fear loses its power. Difference. That's why belief is so essential. It doesn't erase fear. It just makes you stronger than it. Another thing about belief is that it has to be renewed every day. You don't wake up once, decide to believe, and then coast forever. Every day you wake up, doubt tries to creep in, fear tries to return, excuses try to take over. Belief has to be chosen again and again. It's like a muscle. It grows the more you use it. And every time I chose belief over doubt, it grew stronger. Eventually, it became my default setting. Instead of asking, can I do this? My belief turned the question into, how can I do this? That small shift in mindset changes your whole life. When I look back, I realized that belief was the foundation beneath all the work. Without it, the difference. The hours would have felt empty, the sacrifices would have felt meaningless, the consistency would have collapsed, and the focus would have faded. Belief held everything together. It reminded me that even when nobody else saw progress, the process was still working. And that's the message I'd give to anyone chasing something huge. The first person who has to believe is you. Because if you don't, nothing else matters. Here's key point 6 expanded into about 900 words in the same motivational flow. No headings, no conclusion words. The payoff is the part everyone sees, but it's the part that comes last. People look at the results and they think it happened overnight. They think it was luck or timing or some kind of shortcut, but the truth is the payoff was built brick by brick, day after day, year after year. The long nights, the sacrifices, the relentless consistency, the tunnel vision focus, and the unshakable belief. Those were the payments. The payoff was just the receipt. It's funny because when you're in the middle of the grind, the payoff feels like it's a million miles away, like no matter how hard you push, it never gets closer. But the reality is that every hour you put in is pulling it towards you, even if you can't see it yet. That's why most people never experience it. The difference. They quit in the gap between the work and the reward. They stop right before the payoff arrives. When the payoff finally comes, it doesn't just show up as money, success, or recognition. It shows up first in who you've become. That's the real reward. You realize you're not the same person who started. The grind toughens you. It reshapes your mindset. It builds a resilience that no one can take away. Even before the world claps for you, you've already won. Show you the difference, because the process has transformed you into someone unbreakable. The money, the opportunities, the freedom, those are powerful, but they're secondary. So the first payoff is internal. It's the quiet confidence of knowing you went through the fire and came out stronger. That confidence carries into everything you do, long after the original goal is achieved. But yes, the external payoff does come if you stay long enough. The impact starts to spread, the recognition arrives, and suddenly the things you dreamed about in silence become real. People start calling you successful. The difference, but they weren't there for the countless nights you doubted yourself. They weren't there when you worked while they slept. They only see the highlight, never the struggle, and that's why they underestimate what it really takes. The payoff isn't magical, it's mathematical. Effort multiplied by time equals results, and the longer you keep multiplying, the bigger the outcome becomes. What makes the payoff so powerful is that it compounds. At first, you see small returns, little wins that barely feel like progress. But if you keep going, those little wins start stacking, and eventually they explode into something massive. The growth looks slow for a long time, then suddenly it looks instant. That's why people call it overnight success. Difference, but it was really years of invisible effort stacking until it broke through. The payoff is like a dam breaking. The pressure builds quietly until one day it bursts, and the flood of results washes over everything. Another part of the payoff is freedom. Freedom to create, freedom to help, freedom to live on your terms. And I'm going to show you the difference. That's what the grind was always about. Not just working for the sake of working, but building something that allowed me to take control of my life. When you've put in years of relentless effort, the payoff isn't just that you succeeded, it's that you bought back your time. So you earned the ability to decide what your days look like, who you spend them with, and how you use your energy. That's a payoff no amount of money can replace. The payoff also gives you the chance to impact others. When you've built something real, people notice. They get inspired. They see what's possible through your example, and that's one of the most powerful parts. Knowing that your grind didn't just change your life, but it also lit a fire in someone else. Maybe they'll never tell you, maybe you'll never meet them, but your story shows them that they can push harder, believe bigger, and go further. That ripple effect is a payoff that never ends. And yet, the funny thing about the payoff is that when it arrives, the difference, you realize it was never really about the finish line. The journey itself becomes the real treasure. You start to understand that the late nights, the exhaustion, the doubts, the sacrifices, those were the moments that built the story. Those were the moments that made the payoff worth it. Without the struggle, since the reward would feel empty. It's the struggle that gives the reward its weight. The harder it was to get, the sweeter it feels when it finally arrives. The difference, but here's the part nobody tells you, the payoff isn't the end. It's the beginning of a new chapter. Once you taste it, once you realize what's possible, you don't want to stop. You start setting bigger goals, chasing larger visions, aiming for impact beyond what you thought you could ever reach. The payoff becomes fuel for the next climb. It proves to you that the impossible isn't really impossible, and suddenly your dreams expand. You start thinking not just about what you can achieve for yourself, but about what you can build for others, what legacy you can leave behind. The payoff is also a test in disguise. It asks, now that you have what you wanted, difference, will you get comfortable or will you keep pushing? Many people lose after they win because they stop doing the things that got them there. The difference, they let the payoff soften them instead of strengthen them. That's why I had to remind myself constantly the work doesn't stop. The process continues. The difference, the payoff is a milestone, not a finish line. And if you keep grinding even after the payoff, that's when you reach levels most people can't even imagine. So when I look at the payoff, I see proof. Proof that the long hours mattered. Proof that the sacrifices weren't wasted. Proof that belief wasn't foolish. Proof that focus and consistency were worth it. The payoff is the loud confirmation of everything you knew in silence. It's the moment where the world finally catches up to what you believed all along. And that moment makes every ounce of pain, doubt, and struggle feel small. That's the power of the payoff. It's not just the reward you get, it's the vindication that you were right to keep going when everyone else stopped.